Are we recording? Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Louis Stephen. I'm Mayor of Worcester, and I welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. This is a public meeting, and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording, and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note that this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded, and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. I'd like to now introduce my city orator, Rhianna Levi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So, as city orator, I very much give a thought of the day, and as a writer, I felt it necessary to give a kind of creative poem / prose piece. Togetherness runs our existence on the daily. Whether we wish that to be or have a preference in being a lone leaf that swings to and forth in humidity. It's paramount that we recognise our need for human contact and support with people far and near. During the breezy opening of today's velvet curtain, many of us congregated and remembered the atrocities of Srebrenica, where the free will to live well and be on this earth was stripped away for so many in brutality, isolation, and metal. A person's location, race, personality, sexual orientation, gender, and religion should not dictate their death date at the end of a meander. Like all terrible happenings across the globe, innocent lives are eroded because it is forgotten that as a species, we are together one, not separate. Accentuate care for the safety and the seventh heaven of each neighbour and community, including our own. Empathy has the greatest crystallised light when used against shadows, that those shadows that should not necessarily be present. When people search for a better life, whether that be through peaceful strikes, embracing their authentic identity, or undergoing life changes, we have a role to play out as a community. That role is togetherness, an act that thrives in ensuring that hatred, violence, and discrimination is vanquished. Cutting others down is the opposite of what will guarantee succeeding at the end of the day. Because as sudden as we came to be with flesh, calcium, and symphony, as sudden we can be frayed like unmanageable string. Episodes of a transmogrified tale in this striking city highlights togetherness in its jeweled image of busyness and calm alike. Carnivals, balloons, arches, prides, and shows are instances where togetherness is at the forefront. A ship that stands comfortably and sturdily in hurricanes, bestowing an extra beat per minute to the hearts that we often ignore, much like the sensation of appreciation and gratitude. New businesses and social endeavours are born into Worcester each month. Success is defined by the connectiveness of the surroundings. Peruse them or lose them, support them or deny a pillar that brings the community further up. Togetherness is about so much more than the thought of the day, allying to each moment that we set, sigh, blink, smile, strive, write, manifest, and devote. I finished this thought with the following words expressed this morning at the memorial service. For we are together one, more than we detect for the most part. A blazing suit of the rain they became with the struggles underwent. Their wishes not granted in full, to live freely beyond what was given. Here's the thing. As human beings, we are identically similar to the buzzing bees that fly with a purpose to be part of a loving squad. They have their wings working at full speed, not just for their aspirations, but their surroundings. Their expanding genetic family across a swerving globe. We are one together. But when that mindset falters, innocent lives are scrunched into paper balls, their innards crease, pitched, cast. We're shards in the storm if we do not defend people who need us most. We are together one, from birth to death and back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhianna. Now turning to the apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Bissett, Councillor Ditter, Councillor Lawrenson, Councillor Petrovsky and Councillor Round, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Chair.
Councillor Sadiq as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a declaration for item 12.3 for PERD as well. I've recently joined PERD as well, Jim, and I'd recommend it to everyone else in the room. It's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, agenda item 9, the meeting about Warden Parish Council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
I'm also a member of PERD as well, Jim, and have been for many years.
Thank you. Any other? Taxi licensing. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So we'll now turn to the next item, which is the minutes. The minutes that we are going to be considering are the minutes of the 16th of May 2023. Can we all agree that those are a true and fair reflection? And are there any matters arising? No? Okay, in that case, we'll turn to the next item, which is the Mayor's communications. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for electing me as Mayor. It is really touching, and I'm really appreciative of you electing me to be Mayor. Thank you to everyone who came to the civic service on the 25th of June. Last month, I was pleased to represent the council at both Armed Forces Day and also the very well attended Windrush 75 years commemoration day. Thank you too to everyone who was able to make the Remembering Srebrenica Day this morning. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Mayor's charity. I've chosen Age UK, Worcester and Malvern Hills. And the reason I've chosen that charity is for two basic reasons. The first reason is because of the work they do supporting people with fuel poverty. Age UK have a fantastic scheme where they'll go into somebody's property. They're a trusted organisation. They'll go into a property and they'll help them with energy saving things. They'll give them some low energy light bulbs, help them with insulating their windows, get their letterbox fixed. If there's more important or bigger things to be done, then they'll refer them on to people like Act On Energy. They are a very trusted source of advice for very many older people. And they often help them with things like making sure they're claiming all of the benefits that they're due. And if they're lonely, they help them because there are many people who are suffering from bereavement. And there are many lonely older people living at home, and they really do support them to get out into the community. So I am very pleased to be supporting this charity, and I hope you will help me to raise funds for this charity, which I think does a lot of good work for our community. My wife, the Mayoress, did a recent talk. It was a talk on wildflowers in a meadow, and it was well attended, and she raised £50 towards that. I'm also planning to do a charity cycle ride, and it will be a cycle ride for families. The details haven't been fully finalised yet, but it will probably be in September. I hope that as many councillors as possible will join me on that for that fundraising drive. There is another thing I would like to mention about the Mayor's Charity, and it's also about another passion of mine, which is promoting cycling in the city. One of the fantastic schemes that the City Council has adopted is the Shift scheme for, this is a scheme for both officers, but also councillors are eligible for it as well. If you're on council business and you travel anywhere by bike, you can claim 2.5 pence per kilometre, and this goes to the Mayor's Charity. It's a very small amount of money, but it's a symbolic act. When you use your bike, you're obviously going to be reducing emissions in the city, helping to solve congestion, improving public health, and setting and leading an example. There is, if you go to the bike racks, you'll see there's a QR code on there. So if you use your bikes, you turn up at the bike racks, park your bike, get your smartphone out, and it brings up this form. It's very easy to claim your 2.5 pence per kilometre. So I commend you to do that. I think every mayor will often put their own stamp on their mayoral year, and sometimes they will use precedents that have been done before. So I'm very pleased to have an orator this year, like last year. And another precedent which I'm seeking to follow is a precedent which was done by Councillor Paul Denham a few years ago. And this is a precedent which I think is very useful, because normally in September, the mayor will have what's called the inaugural mayor's banquet. It's quite an expensive event. It's costing quite a lot of money, and the costs have gone up significantly over the years. I've decided that this year, because of the cost of living crisis that is affecting many people in Worcester, and the fact that we are going to have to make some significant cuts as a council in this coming year, I think it would be inappropriate for us to have that mayor's banquet. But what I would like to do is to spend that money in a responsible way for certain charities. So I would like to put some small element of this to go towards Age UK, but I would also like to pay for a meal at St Paul's Hostel. And this would be a Christmas themed meal coming up towards Christmas. And I've been in discussions with St Paul's, and they've given me a really nice idea, I think, which is that to ask if there are any councillors, and I'd love it if it was done on a cross-party basis, for say 4 councillors from the 4 groups to serve the food on that night to the homeless people in St Paul's. So please contact me if you'd like to be one of those people. But the other thing that I think would be very useful to do with this amount of money would be that there are many charitable good causes in the city that would benefit from our support. And sometimes it isn't money, but it's the assets which we've got. I mean, we've got a fantastic asset with the Guildhall. And there are many charities who will struggle to book and pay for a room for their particular event. And so again, what I would like to do is I would like to use the money, the budget that we've released from the Mayor's inaugural banquet to enable room bookings to be had for any charities or other non-profit organisations. So this is obviously on a cross-party basis. So if you know of charities that would benefit from having a room sometime in this mayoral year, this is going to be done on a first come, first served basis. And I think this is a great way for us to support local charities. And obviously the money will then be paid be used for the booking fee for the actual room. So we're keeping the principle of that organisations must book the rooms and they must pay for it, but we're going to be providing the money that helps them to pay for the room. Okay. Right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about really is about civility in public life. We've had over the last couple of weeks some training on civility in public life, about how we react and work together. In a general basis, I think we really do work together well on a cross-party basis. When we're in committee, we're generally supporting each other, and we have actually quite largely have unanimous decisions, and things are decided on a consensual basis. So I think it should be upon us all really to make sure we maintain those standards, that we respect each other. And I'm looking at the group leaders to help me support that through these council meetings as we go forward for this year, to make sure we keep that respect for one another in the council chamber. And the last thing I'd like to say is finally just to say that at the end of the meeting, as customary, we will be having some drinks in the Mayor's Parlour, and I'd love it if you come down and have a drink in the Mayor's Parlour. So thank you for that. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public participation. And we have one speaker tonight. It's Elaine Watt, and you have 5 minutes. Over to you.
Okay. Evening, Mayor, councillors. My name's Elaine Watts. I'm a local resident. I'm here tonight to shed light on an issue that concerns truly the fabric of our society, and it's a flag that symbolises divisive ideologies and untruths. The flag that I'm speaking of is the new Pride flag, which is currently flying outside the cathedral in Worcester city centre, and has come to represent gender ideology. Whilst I truly recognise that inclusivity and diversity are to be celebrated, we must also be mindful of the potential dangers that arise from allowing such a flag to be flown in our city without seeking the input of the residents. It's not a matter of stifling individual expression or suppressing anyone's rights, but rather a plea to protect the truth and the children and families that sharing these untruths ultimately affects. Inclusivity and acceptance should never come at the expense of truth. The idea that gender is solely a social construct, disconnected from biological reality, is an untruth that undermines scientific consensus and disregards the complexity of our human existence. So by promoting that ideology through the Pride flag, we risk misleading our youth and promoting an inaccurate understanding of human biology and identity, whilst neglecting the voices of residents who may hold differing perspectives on gender ideology. In flying this flag, it's green lighting unagreed change. Who here has kids in education or have recently come through education? I'm guessing quite a few of you. Well, education then, as we know, plays a fundamental role in shaping the minds of our youth, preparing them for the challenges of the future. Yet, by endorsing a flag that represents a scientific ideology without considering alternative viewpoints, we risk creating an environment that stifles inquiry and free speech and promotes an agenda rather than nurturing independent thought. So those of you who thought when I asked, have I got kids of that age group, how would any of you who have said that you've got these kids handle your child coming back from school insisting there are multiple genders? Or indeed your daughter entering a female loo or changing room to be confronted by a bloke? Because that is where we are, and that's due to not hearing conflicting voices and viewpoints. and it's going to lead to confusion and distress. It's our responsibility as a society to ensure that we promote mental well-being and provide accurate information that aligns with established biological knowledge. And whilst we must strive to create an inclusive society that celebrates diversity, we must also be cautious of the dangers associated with promoting a divisive flag that represents gender ideology and untruths. It's imperative that we engage in open, respectful dialogue, seeking diverse perspectives and ensuring that our actions align with democratic principles. Let us remember that our duty is not only to promote acceptance, but also to uphold truth, preserve democratic value, and protect the well-being of our youth. And I ask that the flag is removed and residents have their say around what the flag represents and how it affects our society. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to talk tonight. I now move to the next item on the agenda. You will get a written response. Okay, next item, questions. So the first question is from Councillor Amos. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will read it out because I'm sure many people won't have had the opportunity to read it. To Councillor Denham, Joint Leader of the Council. The only road through St John's Cemetery is riddled with deep potholes, causing serious danger to pedestrians, cyclists and motorists, and has been in this state for a number of years and is getting steadily worse. With no indication of any imminent repairs to take place, will she explain this neglect and give me a firm date for when all the remedial works along its length will be done to bring the road up to a safe standard?
Thank you for the question. I'm interested in role reversal. It's a big change for you to be asking me questions and not vice versa. So it's a special moment in time. I understand you're inquiring about a facility in another ward in the city. I think there probably is not the neglect that you think. The ward councillors are fully up to speed with plans and actually what is happening within the cemetery. So this year's asset maintenance plan includes provision for the repair of a collapsed drain. So that needed to be done first before the tarmacking and the resurfacing of the road could take place. The drainage and resurfacing works are scheduled to commence in mid-August this year.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Denham for her answer, which I think proves that miracles do happen. St John's Cemetery has been in a state of disrepair for several years. I put this question down, and within days, apparently, we've got a huge investment programme. So I'm very happy, very grateful, but clearly the message is I should ask more questions to get things done.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to question number 2, which is again. Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, is it a question or not? Is it a question?
All councillors have the ability to ask questions, and those of us who are well used to asking questions in a number of places in order to bring forward action can perhaps give you advice. But these were actions in train prior to your question. And in fact, there's a Friends of St John's Cemetery being set up. Whether you'd care to join that Friends group, it's there.
Right, so, sorry, question number 2, again from Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll read this one out again. It's Councillor Bissett, Joint Leader of the Council. The council recently introduced a new payment method in a number of car parks across the city, leaving the only method of payment via a complicated digital electronic technology, thereby giving no choice for a cash and/or card option. This will seriously disadvantage and discriminate against a large number of people, particularly the elderly, who do not use and/or are uncomfortable with such technology. Will she therefore ensure that a cash card option is available at all council car parks across the city so that people will always be given a choice of how to pay? B, that the council will put the needs of its residents and customers before the profit of a few companies? C, that the council will actively encourage elderly people to get out and about for their physical and mental health by removing such barriers? And D, that the council will end the breach of its own policy on diversity and equality in so doing?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, Councillor Bissett is not here to answer as she's poorly, so I don't know exactly what the Green Party view is on this, but as joint leader, I'm happy to give you my views and my answer. This was the distribution of the car park machines and how they function was a decision taken by Policy and Resources Committee in March this year. It's only recently been implemented, and unfortunately I think there's been some misinformation, some of it, I hesitate to say, possibly spread by the press or other people. So it's really important that everyone is fully aware that it's only 5 of the council's 14 car parks which are no longer accepting cash. So it's only 5 that are app only. The remaining 9 continue to operate with either cash, card or an app basis. And, you know, it is about customer service and being mindful that there are many of the customers in the city that actually don't carry cash and for whom a card and an app is their preferred option. So we have just over 1,900 car parking spaces which continue to benefit from cash, card and app payments, compared to only 400 spaces that are app only. Just looking at your question. I think, you know, ability to use a car park machine is not a protected characteristic within the equalities legislation. Many older people are in fact very good with IT. There is absolutely no way in which the council is breaching its duty under diversity and equality.
Yes, thank you, Mr. I'm grateful to Councillor Denham for answering that in Councillor Biss's absence, but I'm disappointed naturally with the answer, because clearly the answer to each of the first 4 points is no. There will not be a choice for many people at most car parks in the future. I would remind Councillor Denham that 5 out of 14 is more than a third. And if I could just ask her this. The brain-dead morons who currently run the railways are now closing all the ticket offices, where 20% of passengers choose to buy their tickets. Do we as a council, a public authority, a public body, want this council to operate like them, take no notice of the 20% of people who want to pay by cash or card, the elderly who don't know how to use this technology, whether they should or not, they don't know how to use it and they don't want to use it? Why on earth can't people just have a choice how they pay to park in this city? And I think it's very disappointing, Mr. Mayor, that we're now going down this road of not giving people a choice and discriminating against elderly people who won't be able to use this technology because they don't understand it.
I'm not sure there is a question in there. not qualified to talk about any decisions with regard to the railways. Definition of 5 out of 14, that is less than most. Most car parks, the vast majority of car park spaces do offer a choice of options as to how to pay. And the smaller car parks which don't have the cash option are actually, all of them have a car park close by, and there's information as to how to get to the nearest car park where people can pay by cash or card. And Choice operates, as I said, in both directions, and people want the choice of being able to pay by card as well as by cash.
So the next question, question number 3 from Councillor Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will, like Councillor Amos, read the question in full. Will the Chair of the Communities Committee give his support to those seeking rented housing within the city who are pet owners? Most private rented HMOs, emergency accommodation, and many registered social landlords have no pet clauses within their tenancy agreements. Worcester people with pets often struggle to find private rented accommodation which will allow them to keep their pets, which causes total heartbreak when tenants are forced to give up their pet in order to become adequately housed. Will he agree that the committee should look at this matter further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The committee can thank firstly the member for his question. The committee can discuss these matters of local interest. In this instance, officers advised that the committee would have no influence over any national legislation. There are not currently any restrictions on landlords advertising properties as no pets allowed. The model tenancy agreement issued by government, which is not mandatory for landlords to use, removed reference to a blanket ban on pets in 2021. Also, the Renters Reform Bill, which is currently going through Parliament, proposes an inclusion in the 1988 Housing Act as a right to request permission to have a pet, and that it is an implied term of every short hold tenancy agreement that a tenant may keep a pet if they ask for and are granted the landlord's consent. It further outlines that consent should not be unreasonably refused, or that the landlord may, if granting consent, apply a condition for tenants to have insurance to cover the risk of damage caused by the pets. And also, the bill does not currently contain any reference to the prohibition of no pets allowed during the advertising of properties.
There are supplementary questions.
There is, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I've recently been speaking to a homeless woman in Worcester who has a child and a small full-time employment as a nurse, but is unable to find any accommodation because of her dog. None of our emergency housing providers will accept a dog. Rights for tenants must come with responsibility, so any tenant with a pet must be held accountable for their behaviour and any damage caused by their pet, and they must ensure dogs are microchipped and well trained. Will he investigate why none of our emergency housing providers will accept a tenant with a dog, and what action can they take to encourage them to change their policy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the supplementary question. Councillor Udall, I will indeed investigate and write necessarily to all the RSLs within the city to demand the answer to those questions. As we've outlined before, there is a very limited option of things that we can do. I know nationally, as a Labour Party, we are seeking that Renters Charter, which includes the protection for pets, and the reform of the bill is currently looming. But I absolutely agree. Over the COVID period, there was a deepening affection with pet owners and their pets, and in most circumstances they are now inseparable, to the point of where you've referenced that it does cause psychological harm if a pet isn't allowed to stay in a property with them. So we'll fully investigate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to question number 4. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'll read the question out. A motion was passed at the council meeting on the 28th of March 2023 that called upon the Managing Director to write to the County Council to request a strategic review into the adequacy of the current provision and suitability of secure rest facilities and overnight parking for professional drivers within the county, working with partners to improve the provision of such facilities in Worcester. During the debate, it was stressed that the County Council, as a local highways authority, have no responsibility for providing such facilities, but Council chose to ignore this important piece of information and passed the motion nevertheless. In the light of the letter received to the Managing Director dated the 23rd of May, confirming that this is indeed the case and that Midlands Connect, the sub-regional transport body, is now conducting research into this, which will be shared by Highways, National Highways, what steps is the City Council considering toward providing such facilities in the City of Worcester?
Mr Mayor, thank you. A very brief reply, really, and I'm delighted to say the Council has no plans at the current time to consider developing such facilities, and whilst it has no statutory responsibility to provide such facilities, officers and I believe many other people look forward to seeing the research undertaken by Midlands Connect.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary question?
Thank you. The supplementary is quite simple, actually. I respect that the City Council has a whole list of current projects, including that of the Towns Fund, and obviously there will be a serious question about capacity in our officer team to actually achieve this. And does he agree with me? We need to wait and see what Midlands Connect deliver in terms of this important facility, but something that is not strictly a priority or responsibility for the City Council.
Happy to embrace brevity again. I agree.
So moving on to the next question, number 5, again, Councillor Hodgson.
Okay, under the government arrangement of Worcester City Council, it is agreed that where a single political grouping does not have a majority of members, that the leadership of the council is shared by 2 co-leaders or joint leaders from the 2 largest groups. In 22-23 municipal year, this was the Conservatives and Labour. Since May 2023, it is Labour and the Greens. Whilst understanding that this arrangement is not the preferred option of the Labour group, why is the leader of the Labour group prepared to share the leadership with the leader of the Green group, but not the Conservatives?
Thank you for your question. Let me explain how this works. In May last year, at the extraordinary meeting of Council, Conservative and Green councillors voted to amend the Constitution so that, in a position of no overall control of the Council, 2 joint leaders will be elected, one from each of the 2 largest parties. Last year, the 15 Conservative councillors then voted for Councillor Bayliss to be leader. I declined to be joint leader as the values and philosophy of the Labour Party are fundamentally different to those of the Conservative Party. This year, and in fact we have the minutes before us, the Conservative and Green councillors again voted together for joint leaders for from the two largest parties. And you're right, it was not my preferred option. I'm honoured to be leading the largest party on the council this year and pleased that all parties, I think, voted for me to be leader. The Green Party are now the 2nd largest group and their members voted for Councillor Bissett to be joint leader. The Labour group did not vote for this, but we accept the outcome of the democratic process.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary question?
Thank you very much for that explanation. What I would say is the Green leader of the Green Group told the council meeting then in early 2021 that drugs should be readily available in shops. Do you believe that she's a more responsible joint leader than an experienced, moderate and pragmatic Conservative group leader?
Sorry, what should be available in shops?
Yes, in the council meeting in early 2021, she said she wanted hard drugs readily available in shops. She said that at a meeting of the full council, which was over Zoom. So are you saying she's more suitable to be a co-leader of the council than, for example, Mark Bayliss, who's an experienced, moderate, pragmatic Conservative leader?
I'm not sure you actually listened to what I said. The Conservative group voted for the constitutional arrangements last year and for the constitutional arrangements this year. I did not vote to have a Green leader beside me, and I chose not to be a joint leader with a Conservative last year.
Next question then is question number 6. This is from Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is to Councillor Denham, joint leader of the council. And my question is, residents living in sheltered housing schemes throughout the city have been contacting councillors about the dramatic rise in service charges. Most of these have risen in excess of 100%, making living at sheltered housing unaffordable, especially as service charges are not covered by housing benefit. This is a significant increase on the cost of living for pensioners who often have a very limited income. Huge increases in the bills demanded by their landlords for energy, services and rent are causing stress, anxiety and poverty. Whilst rent rises are controlled, energy and service charges are not and have risen significantly beyond inflation. Does the leader of the council agree with me that inaction by government has caused significant distress to residents during what is already a cost of living crisis? And can the leader of the council confirm what action could be taken to help these residents?
Thank you very much for your question, which highlights actually quite a widespread concern. Many of us have been contacted by residents from sheltered housing, and it's taken some investigation. So many Worcester people are affected. The explanation is a bit technical, so bear with me. Rent policy is controlled by central government, and they set out the rent formula for social and affordable rents. And the policy on rent increases means that social landlords or registered providers are only allowed to increase rents by the retail price index plus 1%. Due to the dramatic increase in inflation, rent really should have gone up a great deal more, and service charges sit completely outside the rent calculation. So service charges are not restricted by increasing, and the government made no allowance for increased heating costs in properties with shared heating schemes, such as sheltered housing. So whilst other citizens have had an allowance to mitigate the costs of big energy bills over the winter, residents in social housing have not. So some of our vulnerable tenants have been faced with huge bills. Belatedly, the government have now introduced the energy bill discount scheme, which runs from April this year to March next year. However, in order to access that funding, the social landlord themselves have to apply to the scheme on behalf of their customers, who in the meantime have to pay the extra heating charge within their service charge. The applications for that will not be decided by government until October, and in the meantime, customers keep paying the higher bill. So government has really not been at all helpful. The practical answer as to what can be done is that individuals should apply to their landlord in the first instance. Many social landlords have schemes to help people and to support them in difficult times. Obviously, they vary between providers. And if people are in dire straits, this City Council, we still retain our discretionary welfare assistance scheme, and applications to that will be considered if appropriate. The other key thing I should say is actually to write to your MP and complain about this process and the unfairness of this process and the difficulty in carrying it through.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary question?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council for that comprehensive response. My follow-up is I recently met with residents of the St John's sheltered accommodation in the high-rise and low-rise flats, together with councillors Norfolk and Udall. We were also joined by representatives from Platform Housing, who, to their credit, took the time to explain the increases in charges. However, the anger and fear from residents was palpable. It is clear that many residents in the sheltered housing in St John's were deeply concerned as to whether they could continue to afford to fund their basic needs. Does the Leader of the Council agree with me that urgently addressing rising energy costs and seeking alternative green ways of heating our homes should be a key priority of the future Labour government, and I say the future rather than a future Labour government, and this council should work with them to address poor insulation and leaky housing stock in Worcester?
Absolutely. Thank you for your follow-up. Unfortunately, the green energy revolution has stalled since 2010, and many of the previous schemes for home insulation and home improvement are a pale shadow of those that were available under the last Labour government. We need a national government that could make Britain a clean energy superpower, and that would keep energy bills low for good by insulating 19 million homes. And we need to deliver reform in order to give people secure, affordable and decent housing.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 7, Councillor Norfolk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to Councillor Riaz, Chair of Communities Committee. The government support for energy bills did not include homes on communal heating networks. As my colleague, Councillor Denham, has just said, assistance with energy bills for people living in sheltered accommodation was only recently announced to the registered social landlords via the Energy Bills Discount Scheme. This scheme runs from April 23 to March 24, and landlords have to apply for support through the scheme. The decisions on individual schemes are not expected from government until October 23. So in the meantime, there is still no financial support to these vulnerable Worcester residents. Does he share my concern about the impact to our RSLs and their tenants, who are struggling now and cannot wait until the winter for any rebate? The government proposals, decisions and outcomes are too late and fall outside the rent and services charge planning cycle, making it difficult for RSLs to plan and putting undue financial pressure upon their tenants.
Can I thank the member for his question? I appreciate some of this may be repeated from my colleague. but it's important that we highlight some of this information that has been provided. The Energy Bill Release Scheme, the EBRS, ended on the 31st of March 23 and was originally intended as a bridge to allow business to adapt to changing energy prices. The discount was available to everyone on a non-domestic contract, including housing associations who were on existing fixed price contracts, but having to move to a different arrangement due to contract end. From the 1st of April 23, the scheme has been replaced with the Energy Bills Discount Scheme, and through this, the government were aiming to provide heat network customers with a higher rate of relief that will ensure they did not face the disproportionate higher bills when compared to customers in equivalent households who are supported by the Energy Price Guarantee. Consumers on the heat network who purchase heating and hot water for their own consumptions are the ultimate beneficiaries of the benefit of this scheme, and the benefits should the supplier should pass the benefit on to them. Ordinarily, the consumers do not need to do anything to receive this benefit, and many RPs provide their own financial support for tenants. Similar to the discretionary welfare assistance scheme operated by the council, it is hoped that RP tenants can access this and wider support at times of need. The council is also working with the RPs around the Green Homes Grant agenda, which aims to reduce energy costs for those living in properties with poor energy ratings. And the government website provides a comprehensive list of support options for those residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Riaz, for your answer. Will he agree to ask the Communities Committee to consider writing to both the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the City's MP, urging the government to make decisions about financial support for energy costs much earlier, to bring forward the announcements on individual schemes from October, and to make an early announcement about next year's funding to enable RSLs to pass on the benefits to tenants earlier and more efficiently, and without causing undue stress to already vulnerable members of our community?
Can I thank the member for his supplementary question? Mr. Mayor, it feels like the energy rebate scheme is very much an afterthought, and it feels very, very bureaucratic. The rebate goes to the provider, which is then passed on to the landlord, which is then passed on to the tenant. And what tenants need in this time of uncertainty is certainty in terms of being able to budget, in terms of being able to realise what they are allowed, what they can set back for food and their daily cost of living items. Relief for tenants is reliant on the landlord and the provider being in sync with each other. My main question talks about decisions being made about schemes during October, but tenants may in reality start receiving relief as late as December. So whilst landlords are free to pass on energy costs reductions sooner rather than later, and Platform as one of the RSLs who are passing on those reductions in energy prices directly to tenants outside of the normal bill calculation cycle, the real relief will be some 9 months later, and with the current circumstances that we are facing, that is simply far, far too late, and maybe beyond salvation for many vulnerable tenants at this time. So I completely, wholeheartedly agree with him. Will write as chair of...
Sorry, Chair, point of order here. Unfortunately for you, this is a question, not a motion. So a motion can ask, if it's passed, for a chair of a committee or lead or so on to write a letter to the MP and so on. You can't do that with a question, unfortunately, although I very much sympathise with it. I'm just saying what the rules are. So fair enough. We could just wrap up a little bit now. That I appreciate.
That's fine. I think it's fair to say that we are allowed to investigate it at Communities Committee, and we will do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you. So moving on now to the last question, question number 8 from Councillor Cleary.
Thanks, Chairman. In April 2022 at Council, councillors voted unanimously, despite the Labour Party opposing it until the last minute, to set aside a £100,000 capital sum for some overdue developments at Rodber Drive Green Space in Warndon. Conversations were had with charity and private bodies for match funding, and the project is twofold: a primary age play area and additional residence parking by creating access to an existing but currently inaccessible hard standing. Some tree planting, a nature trail, benches, and a review of footpath and lighting were also a part. Now, after 18 months of heel dragging and a change in council leadership, officers informed me that they decided not to proceed with this plan that was agreed at full council. So my question is, what is the point of elected councillors?
Thank you. Councillor Denham.
I'm afraid another explanation about how decision-making actually operates in this council. These projects have not had funding approved. As per the budget paper considered by Policy and Resources Committee on the 8th of February 2022, any capital allocations are dependent upon detailed business case reports being presented to policy committees. No decision has been made. Officers cannot make a decision without councillors making a decision. So no decision has been made not to proceed with this project. Any such decision can only be taken by the relevant policy committee, which is in fact Place and Economic Development Committee. The play area element of this proposal is being recommended, is actually kind of part of the Worcester Play Plan and the Worcester Play Strategy, which is coming to PED Committee on the 24th of July. I understand the member is actually vice chair of that committee, but maybe was unable to attend the committee agenda planning session. The point of elected councillors is to represent their residents at meetings.
Is there a supplementary?
Yeah, there is. Chairman. This project is outside the play strategy. It was a capital sum in response to the comment. And I'm happy to send the email I was sent by officers informing me that this is not going ahead, if that's what the Labour leader of the council wants to see. So my supplementary question is, the rumour in this council and also in my ward of Warndon is that the change in council leadership had an effect in the officers drawing back on this. So my question as a supplementary is, can the Labour leader of the council explain when this is going to come back to councillors to consider it further?
I have had absolutely no discussion with officers of any kind since the annual council meeting on this project.
Right, so that's the end of the questions. At this point, we are going to normally move on to the notice of motion. If there's anybody in the room who doesn't want to be here, and I'm just thinking one or two earlier speakers, they may choose now to leave. Yeah, but you're very welcome to stay if you'd like to. But this is a nice natural break if you want to leave the room at this point. So if you'd like to, you're very welcome to stay if you want to as well. Okay, yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you.
The door will probably under.
Right, okay, so the next item is notice of motions, but there are no motions for this evening's meeting. So we go on to agenda item 8, which is appointment of members to committees. We're going to cover this in two parts. The first part is a slight change to the way we appoint to the Joint Consultative and Safety Committee. A decision has been made by the group leaders that the members of that committee will be the group leaders of each of the 4 groups, and so representing the other councillors on that committee. So that's the first item that we'll be putting to a vote later on. And the second item is there is a small technical change for a number of groups. I'm going to look to Councillor Lewing to talk about the Green Party.
Thank you, Mayor. Our group have decided that it makes more sense for me to be on the P&R committee, as it is the overarching policies committee, as I'm a chair of a policy committee. So it makes sense for me to be in the room. So therefore, I'll be swapping places with Councillor Tom Petrosky, who will therefore take my place on PED.
Thank you. And apologies to Councillor Denham, should come to you first, with the largest group. Councillor Denham, have you got any changes you'd like to make on your committees?
No, I was going to speak to the report and the recommendations in the report, which I expect to propose, and was looking to another group leader to second. I initiated the change in membership of the Joint Consultative and Safety Committee. This is the committee which is the point of liaison between elected members and unions representative of staff. And I consider that an extremely important function. It's really important to me as a leader that our employees are treated well, have good health and safety conditions, and are appropriately supported and remunerated. It is a priority for me. The original membership of the committee, as names given at annual council, did not reflect the seniority and the importance of that role. So following discussion, it was agreed amongst group leaders that the membership should be the 4 political group leaders, and if any one of them is unable to attend, that their deputy should attend. So I move that recommendation to full council.
Thank you. Councillor Alcott, would you like to second that?
Yeah, I would like to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to talk on this motion, on this item? Councillor Stanley.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I actually would like to echo Councillor Denham's comments. At the annual meeting, it was clearly obvious that the 4 political group leaders should be representative on this committee, and I'm happy to take my place alongside the other 3.
Sorry, Councillor Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we just have a clarification of the swap that's being made, please?
Yes. So it's Councillor Lewing. This is on. Sorry, is on the joint consultative committee or on the other ones?
If that's a separate item, then that's a separate item I'm on about.
Yeah. So, as I understand it, there's 4 members on joint consultative. That's 1 from each of the groups, isn't it? Yes. Okay. Fine. Okay. Are there any other questions before we put this to the vote? No. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Next item then.
Just to understand, I think the proposal about the green membership, that's what we're not clear about.
We were voting for both at the same time. Sorry. So this is a small technical change, changing 1 for two members, just swapping over. Yeah. This is Councillor Lewing went through that. She's swapping.
That's correct.
Would you like to do it again?
Because I'm a chair of a policy committee, it makes sense for me to be on P&R. So Tom Petrosky currently is on that. So we're going to swap places with me on PED. Yeah, he's currently on P&R. He'll go to PED. I'll move from PED to P&R. Thank you.
Fine. Okay, fine. Good. Right. We'll move on to the next item, which is agenda item 9. and I'm going to ask Legal Officer Sean Stroud to present this. This is about Warden Parish Council and St Peter's Parish Councils.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report of the Monitoring Officer because it's a request to ask the full council to exercise its powers to undertake a consultation on behalf of the parish councils in the city who have formally written to the council requesting that we undertake that consultation. This arises as a consequence of the City Council's decision to change its own electoral cycle following the Boundary Commission's work, and the impact on the parish councils and their electoral cycle is set out in the report. And practically speaking, the parish councils have asked the City Council to undertake a consultation to consider whether to be open to all options, but to consider whether the parish council electoral cycle could in the future continue to be aligned to the City Council's electoral cycle. So the recommendations are set out in the report. As I say, it's a function of the City Council ultimately to make a local order to change the parish council's electoral cycle, but we would not propose to do that until there's been a consultation which can then be referred back to the parish councils for them to make their recommendations and refer back to full council again. So recommendation 1, council resolves to undertake a public consultation on the options set out between July and September on parish council election arrangements in relation to their 4-year electoral cycle, delegates authority to the corporate director, a responsibility for implementing the consultation. Council notes that on conclusion of the consultation, a further report will be made to the council for consideration and approval of the appropriate option.
So we need a proposer and seconder for this, and then we'll ask for any other speakers. So would anyone would you like to propose it? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Norfolk. Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Hodgson.
Yes, I must declare in interest that I am a Warden Parish Councillor, but I would say I welcome this. Obviously, we, as the Parish Council, we soon realised when the election cycle was going to be changed, what this would actually do. I'm pleased there's 4 options set out there, and I look forward to seeing the consultation process take part in due course. I think we know what the Parish Council's favourite options are, but I'll leave that to the process.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on that? No, in that case, we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No, okay, that's carried. Okay, the next item, this is amendments to the Constitution. I'm going to ask again for Legal Officer Sean Stroud to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another report of the Monitoring Officer seeking approval to update a section of the Constitution, which is the Group Leaders Protocol. The amendments proposed have been discussed with all 4 of the group leaders. A track changes version and a clean copy is provided for your reference. The amendments do not propose to change any of the policy positions set out. They simply reorder the paragraphs and make sure that the document flows clearly from the reader's point of view in terms of the 2 different arrangements that Council have now voted through, Leader and Deputy Leader and Joint Leaders.
I think it's already been decided who's proposing and seconding. It's Councillor Denham and Councillor Alcott for seconding. Would you like to speak on the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to propose this to full council. It's arisen because I realise there was a level of chaos at annual council, and I think at the end of it, we actually had not signed a leaders protocol. In previous years, that has been part of annual council, and it provides a protocol and an agreement of ways of working between different political parties, between the group leaders and with officers. Looking at it, there was some kind of administrative updating, but the key function is actually to have a signed agreement in place to manage behaviours and to get us through to the end of this civic year.
Thank you. Councillor Alcott, would you like to second this and speak on the motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to second, and I don't need to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Mayor. I've just got a question, really, which may be more appropriate for the monitoring officer than the joint leader. But given the questions that we had earlier tonight, in the protocol, it says that the joint leaders will agree their allocation of responsibilities on almost on an ad hoc basis. If a member asks a question of one of the joint leaders, who decides which joint leader it is asked of?
Sean.
Through you, Chair. Officers advise and members decide. The protocol says that joint leader responsibilities will be shared and discussed by agreement. Where both joint leaders are able to attend a meeting, they would be able to agree between themselves. Where one has to necessarily step in for the other because of unavailability, then that one will end up responding to all the questions.
Does that mean, if you don't mind, that if I wish to ask a question of Councillor Bissett, but it's deemed appropriate, more appropriate that Councillor Denham answers it, I don't get my right to ask Councillor Bissett that question?
Through you, Chair. I'm very happy to take offline and have a detailed discussion about the Constitution, but my advice at this stage would be the function of the leader in our Constitution is the same, however many leaders we have.
On this item? No, in which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No, okay, that's carried. Okay, so the next item is agenda item 11, and this is a report of the Members Champion for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Robin Norfolk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking members for the honour and privilege of electing me their Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Champion last year. And I'd also like to thank officers for their help and coping with my interferences also over the last year. I'm not going to go through the body of my report. It is what it is. Its weaknesses are all mine. But I would just like to call out some of the actions that council officers have taken over the last year or so, if I may. And I make no apologies for sounding like I'm reading off a list, because I am. Museums Worcestershire have run the following projects. A mini Pride in conjunction with Action for Children, creating a mini Pride event for Tran Cakes and Safe Space, support groups for young people exploring their gender identity and also their parents and carers. Clay Days, in conjunction with Site Concern, Worcester Art Gallery and Museum ran a project where participants took part in pottery and clay workshops led by a pottery specialist. Ukrainian refugees were welcomed to the Museum Glove Affair collection, a facilitated visit to the Canaletto exhibition and a welfare session at the Commandery. Our guests were curious to learn about the history of their new home, including the difficult times of conflicts and war, such as the Battle of Worcester in 1651, and the parallels to the conflict in the Ukraine. The museum service offers and continues to develop its offer to schools and home educators, and all sessions cater for SEND needs. And in conjunction with Site Concern and Insight, the museum has broadened access to exhibitions, including audio tours, gallery sessions and braille labels. The museum's Vardo project is building relationships with the GRT community to archive their stories and oral histories telling the rich history of the Vardo collection and related communities. And the museum service has published a new health and wellbeing guide. Careful consideration has been paid to the languages spoken by many of our residents. The annual survey was published in 3 languages, and key information on voter ID was translated into 7 languages, and presiding officer and poll clerks received EDI training. The EDI steering board had its second meeting last week. I've mentioned that in my report, sorry for being boring. And I'm looking forward to attending subsequent meetings which will be held quarterly. These meetings allow officers to share best practices and make recommendations about where the council should focus its efforts. Members will recall that we are about to approve the additional funding required to install a changing places toilet, specially adapted loos for the needs of those with special needs and their carers. I look forward to seeing further such toilets installed across the city, either as part of the High Street improvements or through other projects. More staff have trained as mental health first aiders, and we are providing mental health and dementia training for frontline staff. We are providing facilities for staff, allowing them to take time for prayer, crisis needs, personal and medical care. We ran targeted play consultations, and I am aware that members have expressed concern that we may have missed some SEND groups in Worcester. I would just like to reassure members that play consultation hasn't ended, and consultation with residents will be included as part of each play delivery project, helping us ensure that all play needs are met. I'd also like to point out that the Worcester Life Stories work, especially with people suffering with dementia, has been nationally recognised, and that an article in an established dementia care journal, I can't remember the title, lauding our work, will be published shortly. During the last Environment Committee meeting, we heard about a mystery shopper exercise covering guide dog users and taxis. Out of 6 journeys booked, only 1 journey was declined. The driver subsequently lost his licence to ply his trade in our city. It goes without saying that I should thank Guildhall staff, mayors, deputy mayors and councillors, past and present, for their efforts in recognising the diversity of residents across our city, including the recent Windrush commemorations, Holocaust Memorial, the Srebrenica Memorial Day, and it is a delight to see Pride this year taking place during the summer months instead of halfway through the party conference season. It would be wrong of me not to call out the efforts that our marvellous community engagement team do in working with and bringing together the various communities in our city. Specifically though, I'd like to bring members' attention to an upcoming campaign, Speak Up, working with organisations associated with the 9 protected characteristics, seeking input and advice on tackling aggressions. A series of workshops will be held along with a series of interviews. The intention being that we can develop a strategy which will help us and our communities, hopefully in time for Hate Crime Awareness Week in October. Finally, I'd like to thank staff, officers and members for making the last year such an easy journey for me, and I look forward to serving the Council as its champion over the next year as we build on our successes of last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robin, for that. I'll open the floor now to questions for Robin. If you'd like to ask Robin any questions on that report. Councillor Stanley.
If I may, Mayor, it's not so much a question as, first of all, a commendation of Member Champion's work. I think it's superb work. I think the report is first rate, and I would commend it to the members in this room. The key thing to remember is that intolerance of any description should have no place in our society. It is absolutely vital that all members of all communities, wide and varied across Worcester, feel safe and valued in our city. So, although I have no question for him, but I felt it was important to speak as leader of my group to commend the work that is being done, and I hope will continue to be done. So, thank you.
Are there any other speakers on this? Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Likewise, I'd like to commend my colleague in terms of the great work she has done in terms of bringing this agenda out and practicing what we preach in terms of that. More of a comment than a question, but I know with her help and with the council officers' help, we've achieved some significant change. I know the recent State of Cricket report that was released by the ECB in terms of the devastating discrimination from a grassroots level to a upper level has been, really devastating to certain parts of this community, to women and girls in terms of equality and pay. And I know Councillor Ali here, we managed to achieve something significant last year in Brickfield when we managed to put that artificial pitch in. in terms of being able to cater to a community that traditionally never has had access to cricket, addressing those concerns, and the wider discrimination of cricket clubs being kicked off from fields or around the villages to be able to provide them with a home. That's real change that we've managed to enact. On top of that, we've managed to achieve through help and through advice from council offices with Freedom Leisure, a women's only swimming session that got rid of when Stanton Walk swimming pool got dismantled. That's real policy change that we've managed to achieve, that we're addressing the needs of our city slowly but surely to protect women, to give a greater choice to our residents. So I'd really like to commend Robin on the work she has done, and I hope long may it continue. No, I think the question was in terms of especially the cricket and the sport and access to sport for women and children, and in terms of cricket as well. Based on that, obviously, I sit on the cricket board as well. I'd like to work with Robin in terms of getting over any council recommendations on the back of that report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if I may,
briefly, if you may, yeah.
I will try and be brief. I know I had a lot to say, which is unusual for me. Thank you, Councillor Riaz. Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I truly believe that every one of us has a leadership role in this city, and we demonstrate our embracing of the various communities in our city, in our everyday actions, in our everyday decisions. And I look forward to supporting each and every councillor in my role as champion in helping make those decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to add my thanks to Robin and other councillors and the officers that have supported the emerging policy. It's been an interesting development since I've been a councillor, and as the EDI representative of the Liberal Democrats Party in Worcester, I'm very pleased to support the actions that have been taken, and very pleased to see how diverse the diversity is.
Would you like to respond to that, Robin? I don't think it's a question, is it? No, it's an affirmative question. Okay, and now I've got Councillor Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to put on record my thanks to Robin as the Equality and Diversity Members Champion, and for the work that she has done over the past year, and it's to be congratulated. I would like to use this opportunity, though, to, I hope, distance myself and the rest of the council from some of the outdated and irrelevant comments which were made earlier this evening during public participation. We did listen to them in, I think, stunned silence. I'm glad that the person is no longer in the room. For one, I would like to say I'm happy and proud that we fly the pride flag, and long may we do so.
Well done. Thank you. Right. Unless there's any other questions. Right, we don't have to vote on this, do we? No, it's just noting. Okay, so the next item then is item 12, which is reports from relevant committees. The first one is referral report from the Environment Committee. Councillor Lewin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really pleased to bring this referral report from the Environment Committee, and I just wanted to say a few words because the background to this project, I think particularly for new councillors, it'd be good for you to know that it actually began back in 2019 through a council motion and has subsequently received a combination of Section 106 funding, councillor divisional funds and capital to transform an overgrown and a really hard to use area for the local community, an area that they really needed, particularly with the new housing that was built there. The extra money is going to pay for an ecological assessment. It's a very sensitive area, and it's important that the work done is going to enhance the ecology of the site, and it's going to provide hopefully a kickabout area for families, improve connections across the site with a new boardwalk, steps and a link path, and this will enable the local residents to actually use the area to the absolute way that they should. So I'd like to propose that the council agrees to this report, but firstly I'd like to ask the Vice Chair of Environment Committee whether you'd like to speak and second the report.
I'm more than happy to second this. Cameron's already said a lot of the things I was going to say about the checkered history of this project and how long it's taken to get to this point, and also about the nature of the area and the importance of it. It is the Mecco Memorial Nature Park, and Karen's talked about the nature element, and we're very committed to our biodiversity strategy, and it's nice to see that sort of element making its way to the west side of the city and the changes that are happening. The one thing that Karen didn't mention I think is important, and for those people who were here in 2019, which I wasn't, but I had heard quite a lot about it from that role, is that the other thing is it's the memorial nature of this park. This is there to commemorate those who were killed in the bombing raid in Mecco and Mecco Works in Worcester in World War II. So it has a multi-purpose. This is about a modern day facility that community can use, that this will make the money will make it accessible for that community to use it in a safe way that's good for the environment. It is about that biodiversity and building in nature, but it's also about recognising the history of Worcester. Lots of people don't associate Worcester as an area that was subject to bombing, and to commemorate those people that died. So again, I would very much urge people to vote in favour of this. You voted in favour of it in 2019 when it first came up. Environment Committee were unanimous in their support across the parties for this, so I'm hoping that actually Council will be too. And it should have actually come earlier, but just for an administrative error, we agreed this in March, so it just needs from our perspective, it's a tidying it up to make sure that it's gone through the fair and due processes.
Thank you. I think it's worth just mentioning, I'll come back to you in a moment. It's worth just mentioning that this is a referral report. It's been discussed at length at committee. It's been decided, I believe, on a unanimous basis on cross-party committee. It's not going to be normal to reopen these sorts of debates. It'd be unusual when we do that. So with that in mind, I'm going to come to Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very brief point. I mean, as I was the seconder of the original motion back in 2019, and one of the councillors for St John's, and I continue to support this proposal. This park is still an appropriate memorial to those who died in the Mecca bombing. And I also believe, and this is my additional point, I also believe that this park offers further opportunities to integrate the green spaces of all of our city. On Sunday, Councillor Cookson and myself, we walked the full length of the Wildabout Worcester Way, which links the parks and green spaces of Worcester. However, save for a brief walk along the west bank of River Severn, it did not make the most of the nicest bit of the city, which, as we all know, is St John's. And I think the Wildabout Worcester Way could be extended to integrate this new park, as well as Cripplegate Park, Lawnbrook Nature Reserve and St John's Cemetery. So I'd really like the Environment Committee to consider this.
Absolutely. Other points or questions to be raised? We'll take to the vote. So if there's no further questions, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Any abstentions? Anyone against? Okay, that's carried. Right. So the next item then is a referral report from the Policy and Resources Committee, proposed changing places toilet at the Corn Market. Councillor Stanley.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'll be brief here because this particular item cuts to the heart of what we were talking about when we were discussing Councillor Norfolk's report. This is about respect for a mercifully small number of people, but still critically important people within our society. I expect, and in fact I know, that this will receive unanimous backing, and I'm more than happy to commend it to everyone. Thank you.
Would anybody be prepared to second this motion, please? Councillor Denham, thank you.
Yes, thank you. As one of the vice chairs of PNR, I'm very happy to second this motion and fully support it. It absolutely is about making our equality, diversity and inclusion strategy and policies real, and it's an element in making the city centre accessible, and is, you know, supported by, I know, the Business Improvement District and other partners. So we've received outside funding to enable this to happen, just need a small amount of top-up funding to put it in place. So I commend the recommendations.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? If not, then we move straight to the vote. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous, isn't it? Thank you. Okay, the next item is a report on the new artificial grass pitch, and this is going to be proposed by Councillor Riaz.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is for the council approves the use of land at Purdyswell for the provision of a new artificial grass pitch. It's been through the cycle 2 or 3 times now. We've had unanimous backing behind it. All the concerns that have been raised have been adequately addressed by officers. I thank officers for their detailed and thorough investigation of this proposal. It'll be a landmark destination site for us that will boost the economy, help the health and well-being agenda, add vital facilities that are needed, reduce the carbon footprint, and reduce air pollution and save people money in terms of the travel time that they're spending. It'll make Purdyswell a long-held ambition for a sporting destination within Worcester, and I recommend it to members. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Anyone like to formally second it? Or speak, or say some more words? Yep. Okay. Are you going to speak, or are you just? Fine. You just fine. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Lawrence.
We, the Liberal Democrat councillors, firmly believe in the value of sport and recreational activities for the physical and mental well-being of our community. However, we must acknowledge our responsibility to stand up for the environment and ensure its long-term preservation. Whilst acknowledging the biodiversity offset has been included in this project at my insistence, we cannot turn a blind eye to the significant environmental impact associated with artificial turf surfaces, specifically the release of microplastics, which would be onto Purdyswell, one of Worcester City's premier nature reserves. These tiny particles of synthetic materials have been found to cause substantial harm to our environment and ecosystems. They contaminate our soils, pollute our waterways, and get into our food chain and present a threat to our delicate biodiversity of human beings. In March, a report was published based on a study of only 22 adults, but 17 of these were found to have plastic traces in their bloodstream. That's almost 80%. Therefore, in Plastic Free July, we, the Liberal Democrat councillors, will not be supporting this motion for the provision of the 3G artificial football pitch, although we would welcome any further football pitches and the health benefits that this would bring the community without sacrifice to our local environment. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? No. Oh, Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there are no other speakers, I'd like to speak to the point that the councillors are making. I completely understand their position in terms of this. This was robustly debated at that meeting. These points were made at that, and mitigating factors were suggested by officers in terms of how we could minimise the impact of that. Part of those mitigating circumstances were installing wash facilities immediately outside the pitches, so that any of the plastic waste that could be carried in on shoes back into the home would be absolutely minimised. So we are looking at those concerns. On top of that, it was also noted that the recycled infill material, that there's current legislation going through European Parliament that will eventually mean that we are not able to use that infill material again. So any subsequent infill material that is required, it will be of a sufficient quality that wouldn't cause those environmental damage. I think officers and members have done sufficient work on this, and our Green colleagues were satisfied with the mitigating circumstances in that. But the overall cost benefit to the city of this facility negated the impact that the members have highlighted, and mitigating circumstances were put in place in terms of being offsetting that. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to speak in favour of this proposal. I think it is something the city needs. We do need, under the football statute that was presented to council a few years ago, we do need a certain number of 3G, 4G pitches. Although the weather's good today in the winter, muddy pitches and that mean matches are cancelled and that. This means, you know, people can play football longer hours. I think it's encouraging that it will allow for girls football as well. And this pitch is not particularly excessive in terms of proposal. It thought of it just over the minimum FA rules regarding pitch dimensions and that. And the other thing as well is, if we turn this down, not only are we wasting the money we've already invested in this project, but we're also losing a grant of £600,000, which will benefit football in the city that we would lose, and it would go elsewhere.
All those against? And I guess there are no abstentions. Nope, okay, that's carried. Thank you. Right. Next one is item 12.4. This is a referral report from Licensing and Environmental Health. Call on Councillor Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief, as I hope this will not take up too much of council time. The proposal has had the full support of the Licensing Committee, and after recent consultation, it had 87% of drivers that are also agreeing to the proposal. It's to abolish all age limits for electric taxis and to extend age limits for second-hand petrol and diesel cars from 3 to 5 years. This enables us to incentivise our stated ambition of having a carbon-neutral taxi fleet by 2030, and this is just the start of the process. I do wish to stress that no car will be allowed as a taxi or a private hire vehicle on our roads which does not meet the highest of standards, including emissions testing. All cars will be required to meet Euro 6 emissions quality, which is the highest available for all diesel vehicles. Vehicle condition and standards will remain a high priority for us. The new policy requires adoption by Council, so I move.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to echo Councillor Udall's comment and second the motion. Thank you.
No, in which case we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, one abstention. Thank you, that's carried. Right, the next one, 12.5, is the report from the Planning Committee. I'm calling on Councillor Lewing to present this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm afraid I'm not going to be brief because it is my pleasure this evening to bring this very positive referral report from the Planning Committee. It's an important regulatory committee making significant decisions that benefit residents and shape our city, and the surface performance greatly impacts the council's reputation. So I do feel that an annual report is therefore appropriate and very welcome. Through significant investment of time and resources and effort by officers and members, I'm happy that we are now delivering an efficient and effective service where government targets are being met and exceeded. The team is continually looking to drive improvements and respond to changes in the planning system. I would like to thank members for the investment of time in this committee. Their commitment to making democratic and sound decisions despite the complexity of issues and also the sometimes controversial nature of applications. And this is certainly made easier by the continuing work of officers and through the lead of Sian, Duncan, Paul and Charlotte. And together with their team, they have successfully tackled what we all know was a huge backlog of applications. And the service is now performing well, as you can see from the numbers in the report. As a council, we recognise the impact of good service on residents and on developers who wish to invest in the city, where quick and fair decisions allow building work to progress quickly. For residential applications, where the target is to decide within 8 weeks, officers complete as many as they can at the moment in just 6 weeks, and this is receiving an extremely positive response from the public. You will also see in the report that the Corporate Director invited an internal audit to look at the customer journey. This is another really important aspect of the planning service, and the resultant actions for improvements will be coming to the Audit and Governance Committee to look at. The report also includes details of complaints and compliments. So it's really clear that there is a culture of learning and investment in improving the service. And this will improve the quality advice, giving developers the confidence to invest in the city, and also improve staff morale and retention. The team has made great strides in the reputation of the service in the past couple of years and have enhanced the council's reputation as a sound and fair decision maker. And I believe that our city is now reaping the benefits. I'd like to commend the report to you and invite my Vice Chair, Councillor Agar, to speak and second the motion. Thank you. The report, sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the invitation, Councillor Lewing. As you will be aware, members, planning is a regulatory committee with a clear constitutional role as detailed in section 2 of your report. As a regulatory committee, it makes decisions within the constraints of national planning policy and guidance, and with regard to local policies such as the South Worcestershire Development Plan and supplementary planning documents that underpin those policies. So essentially, it is very much a rule-based decision-making process which shapes the city we live in. So it does raise real passions at times, and it's up to us to try and manage that process well. As you've heard, also the Planning Committee meets more than any other committee. That's 11 times this year. It does require a substantial time commitment from its members and from the officers who support the work of the committee. Committee members undertake mandatory training at the beginning of the year, and the plan is to have an ongoing briefings through the year, because planning legislation can be fast-moving at times, and we think that this will help to keep our skills fresh and up to date. Regarding constitutional changes mentioned in section 4.3, just to highlight the change minded to refuse process, which was originally introduced to give committee members breathing space to formulate clear written reasons for refusal of an application, especially where contrary to officer advice. But it was also always a cumbersome process, with the wording coming back to the committee at their next meeting. Now that part of the process, that is, agreeing the final wording for refusal, is taken outside the meeting and formulated by officers in agreement with the chair and vice chair. So you'll note that the chair and vice chair are always from different parties, and if we do disagree on such a thing, then the wording can come back to the committee. So there is always that safeguard, but so far that hasn't happened. Regarding service improvements, at the start of the year, there was a backlog of 350 undetermined planning applications. Now there are only 80, and that's a reduction of about 75%, 78%. And I think you'll agree that's quite an achievement on the part of our officers. There's still some way to go, and there are still some outstanding applications, but a lot of progress has been made. Caseloads have been reduced, caseload management has improved beyond recognition. And I think that's been a huge benefit to the officers who work in planning, because it can be quite stressful and onerous. So we don't want anybody getting ill because they're overburdened, and I think that's less likely to happen now than it was before. It should be noted that delays to applications often involve negotiating solutions to technical issues with developers who would rather make this attempt than start the application process all over again. So that's what we do. With these issues in mind, we look forward to the recommendations of the Audit and Governance Service Review and the opportunity to improve the service further. Regarding feedback and complaints, you've got a detailed account of a complaint relating to St Placid's on Batten Hall Avenue, and it's included here because it led not only to important learning, but also to changes in how we inform objectors of any late papers in advance of the meeting via email. So we have improved again in that way, and it was really quite important that we did. Legal challenges, well, we do have a judicial review, as you'll see in section 6.3, and this is a cross-boundary issue in relation to the Broomall community and Norton Barracks development. And the NHS Acute Trust has requested 106 money to bridge a financial gap in the delivery of acute healthcare services for the first year of residence in that development. But all three South Worcestershire councils refused the request. Mainly, I think we believe that the Acute Trust should be funded in other ways, but there is a judicial review because the Acute Trust doesn't entirely agree. We didn't think at the time that their request met the legal tests for the receipt of 106 funding. So we're looking forward to the outcome of the judicial review. I'd just like to end by thanking all the committee members and echoing Karen Lewis's thanks to them and to the officers who are doing such an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to echo positive comments. I've seen a real improvement in the planning committee, and we all know we have a national shortage. And I think it's an easy sort of win for people to be political and kind of mean to the council, really. But the officers have generally worked hard. We've got new people, and I think they're doing a really great job. And I would just like to say thank you.
Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Lewing and Councillor Agar for their summary and their report. And clearly there's a lot of progress that has been made in this department, but it's important not to gloss over that dark period and how it has affected the landscape and individual applications and businesses who were waiting for months and months for decisions, and how the cost of materials that had risen that put beyond their means, beyond the means of ordinary people that wanted to realise an extension, and beyond their financial means to realise those extensions or those building projects that they didn't put beyond that. I understand the situation has been difficult within the council, but I think it's also important to acknowledge it, the huge cost that has come to members of the public who were waiting on statutory decisions for the council to be determining those things, and how it has affected businesses. And it's really, really important that how we've to turn things now to regain that confidence back in the general public and amongst our builder and developer and business people community that have been waiting for those decisions. There's been businesses in the city that wanted to have invested millions that couldn't do that because they were waiting for planning permissions and decisions and delays. I understand that this great progress is made. I think we're heading in the right direction, but we do owe an apology out to businesses and to the general public for the delays that they've faced.
I just wanted to say it's really useful to have this detailed report, and well done to everybody that's seen the developments. There is a lot of focus in the report on planning permissions, but I also just want to highlight the importance of planning enforcement, and that's a very important role. And I'm very pleased to see that you're looking at learning from experience, and that's really a big part of the report. So as it appeals as the local member for Rainbow Hill at the moment, given the absolute hell that residents are going through in the Mayfield Road development, I would hope that there will be some learning from that that's taken forward.
Any other speakers on this item? No? in which case we'll move to the vote on that. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on the last referral report now, and this is for the Standards Committee. I'm going to ask Councillor Lawrence to present this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to commend this Standard Committee annual report, which went through our Standards Committee. I'd like to propose it. I would also like to thank Councillor Mal Alcott and Councillor Andy Roberts for their hard work, and Sian for her advice and support of theirs and continuing support to ourselves, and for organising the training in the recent civility and public life. Yesterday I was very privileged to be sat in the Commons and listening to the Privileges Committee MPs actually discussing civility in public life and the impact it's had on them personally, going through a recent contentious report. So I would like to, well, I don't need to read it all out to you, but I would like to just propose it.
And do we have a seconder for that? Yes, Joe. Okay, thank you. Seconded. Okay, are there any speakers on this? Questions? No, in which case we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No. Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you. The next item is a report from joint leaders of the council. If you have a report that you'd like to give. Do you have anything? No. Thank you. I don't believe there are any exempt items. So I think that means that we're now at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. Oh, there's just one thing I would like to say is that we've got some envelopes on our tables. How would you like to say a few words about this?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for your inquiry. I took the liberty, and I hope it's okay, of putting a small directory of local support for Armed Forces veterans in every place today. So it's for your information, and I hope you'll pass the information on. Thank you.